Welcome to Tropic Topics, and we are on episode 17, I believe. I think I titled it as that. Anyways.
It's a lot.
we've been here a while. We've got several more weeks to go. It does, I don't want to jinx anything, but it does appear that we're going to start to shut down the MDR region. That's the main development region in the Atlantic. And we may be talking about an Arctic front probably within the next couple of weeks, making it all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. So we could
that would definitely help.
We could be wrapping up tropical season here relatively quickly. Emphasis on could. We're still going to have to watch subtropics once we get cold fronts to make it into the Gulf, and it does appear that there may be even an area of interest along the Gulf Stream as we go toward next week. But that's kind of a sign that things are wrapping up. Whenever we start to see subtropical systems developing on the Gulf Stream, it's usually that transition to nor'easter season versus tropical weather. So that is some good news as far as the tropics go, but we do have activity out there now. And as always, if you are tuning in for the first time, welcome and joining us here on Tropic Topics. We do this every Thursday at 1, or at least it's supposed to be at 1, but usually this guy is late.
It's usually whenever Ross gets here.
It's usually whenever I get here is when we start. But we're trying to bring a little levity to tropical season. We're trying to, transition away from the scared nature that was what Hurricane Michael brought on, and, bring the realization that we live in the tropics. We're going to have to deal with it every year. Some years will be... Should
learn about it, know how it works.
That's right.
What to expect.
Some years will be busier than others, and some years will be, quiet and calm.
Yeah.
And
we like those years.
I know. I'm looking forward to one of those years because I haven't had one since I got here. So maybe I just need to be shipped out of town, and then we'll have some quiet season. No, I'm just kidding. If you have any questions or comments, concerns, anything that you want to ask us, it can be tropic weather related. Refrain from personal questions. You can ask. We probably won't answer them, but you can ask. Put those in the comment section on any of the Facebook pages you're watching. We've got them all up. You can't see the devices that we're looking at, but they're there.
We're looking at devices.
And we are looking at those devices. So if you have any questions, put them in the comment section, and we will try to get to them, especially if they are tropical weather related. We will answer those to the best of our ability. We're going to start things out with the tower cam, and Kristen can start off with today's conditions and the forecast. She just came off of her shift, so she probably has a better idea of what's going on today
10 hours
than I do.
Yeah, so right now we are taking a look from Panama City off towards the north. We have a good bit of moisture trying to stream in that we're currently seeing in the form of cloud cover at this time. It's also a little bit humid out there, so when you step out the door this afternoon, you'll certainly feel it. Temperatures are sitting mainly in the middle to upper 80s at this time, but feeling more like the 90s. And again, that's because of the moisture that currently is streaming in, with winds now coming from the southwest, I believe it should be, because we do have a high pressure system sitting over us at this time. It's been relatively dry, pretty quiet for us this week, and again, that has to do with the ridge that's been bouncing across the Gulf of Mexico, mainly on the eastern half of it. And what happens with ridges of high pressure is you get air that typically is sinking and compressing, doing the opposite of how we get rainfall, is air that needs to rise and condense. So that's really why our rain chances this week have been really slim, really not too present, although yesterday we did have some showers on the western edge of that high as moisture from our west was trying to battle a little bit drier air. So really pretty nice week we've had so far. I know people aren't really complaining because we've not had rainfall. I know everyone definitely wants the sunshine, they want the drier air, or at least the lack of rainfall in the forecast, and it looks like that's going to continue as we head into the weekend. We will see rain chances starting to rise by early next week. We'll be watching a front coming in from our northwest that's going to try to dip down south, and it looks like it's going to bring us some precipitation. Most of it's still expected to stay well off towards our northwest, but a better chance for some showers and storms coming by early next week into the middle of next week. And with that, we should start to see our temperatures backing off from that very intense summer-like heat.
It's a pretty difficult pattern we're going into, especially forecast-wise, so bear with us. Rain chances are probably going to be around 40 to 50%. Some of those days will likely be wet all day long, and some of those days are probably going to be dry all day long. This is what we would call a cutoff pattern, meaning that the steering currents are non-existent, so the low pressure system's just kind of going to drift off to the east, and it may drift back west and then drift east again.
Bounce around and bring us some rain.
It's one of those weather patterns where we look at it coming up and we're just like, oh boy.
We're like,
because
it's not what we want. It's not what the people want. It's just going to be.
I mean, it's not bad in any way. It's just hard to forecast.
Yeah.
It's an extremely low, lazy, confident forecast. I mean, there's a low confidence in when we have upper level lows meandering around. It's just a low confidence forecast all the way around. So that's what we got coming into next week, and that will impact our tropics somewhat. Part of that is good news because it will help keep the Gulf of Mexico nice and clear for us. The other part is bad news because it might be 4 or 5 days of cloud cover and shower activity that nobody wants to deal with. But if it keeps the tropics away, I'm okay with it. Going into the tropics, and that's where we are, we've got Hurricane Sam out there, still a major hurricane. And I have to say, storms like this that develop this asymmetrical shape and have the beautiful circular eye, they're pretty.
I was going to say, they are so pretty.
And
as long as they stay over the water.
This storm has been absolutely gorgeous. And when it was nearing Category 5 strength, I mean, that might have been the most symmetrical Atlantic hurricane I think I've ever seen. I mean, it was an absolute buzzsaw. And it's still a pretty storm, and thankfully it's not going to really affect anyone. It might get real close to Bermuda, but it looks like it's going to miss Bermuda too. So the only places that it could potentially impact is maybe an extratropical transition into Canada, but really not a big deal. And Sam is going to do us a bunch of favors here because it is going to keep that weakness in the ridge across the Atlantic. So not only is Sam destroying the ridge, it's also keeping the weakness right where this storm is going. So we're going to have Victor go right to that same weakness, and potentially whatever develops in the Gulf Stream also could go right to this weakness that Sam is creating. So that is good news, and Sam has started to take that more northerly jog. And the further east it goes, I mentioned this in a little talk to Kristen earlier this week, the further east this goes, the better off it is for us. The early model runs had this getting much, much closer to the U.S., and that concerned me a lot because that would have made the Central American gyre setup much closer to home with the leftover pattern. And I certainly didn't want that. So the further east this goes, the more likely that any kind of gyre development that happens in the southern Caribbean, not the northern Caribbean. And stuff that happens down there likely runs into either the Greater Antilles or goes into Central America. It has a far less chance of actually moving into the Gulf of Mexico if it happens to be created in the southern Caribbean versus the northern Caribbean. So that is the good news here with this continuing to trend off to the east. But it is still a major hurricane, and like I said, it's a pretty storm. It's the satellite presentation has been pretty. Ironically, it's almost the exact same path that Larry took earlier this year. It's just slightly shifted off to the south and west. So two storms that are chewing up the ridiculous amounts of accumulated cyclone energy, but not impacting anything, and I'm okay with that.
We like that.
We like all seasons that do that. So here you see it, once it starts to make that curve back off to the north and west, that is when it's trying to go through that extratropical transition. It's going to run into a nice stream of vorticity coming off of the northern jet or our polar jet and transition into extratropical. So that's a fancy term for saying it's going to go from a tropical system to a synoptic system and make that transition and then just become one of our big lows around the U.S. So doing what typhoons do in the Pacific all the time, which is affect our jet stream. And it will affect the weather pattern into Europe and Russia. And eventually, probably 15 days from now, it will have some kind of impact on the jet stream for us. So down the road. But that's the good news. And Tropical Storm Victor, like I've already mentioned here, also not much of an issue. West-northwest at 14. The interesting aspect to Victor, if there is any, is how far south it developed. 8.5 degrees north. That is pretty dang south. I mean, you typically our main development region is around 12 to 15 degrees north, so 8.5 is pretty close to the equator. The reason that's significant is because the closer you get to the equator, the less Coriolis force there is. So when you're at the equator, things don't want to spin there.
Yeah.
Because there's no force pulling to the north or pulling to the south. They just don't want to spin. So pretty interesting to see something develop that far south. I don't think we'll ever see anything develop 5 degrees north or further south than that. And certainly, I think the question that everyone asked, and I think this was brought up today or this week to me, was, if you had a tropical system cross the equator, would it then spin the opposite direction? The answer is yes, but you would never have a tropical system cross the equator.
Yeah, it would just die.
Yeah, it would completely fall apart. And no, the toilet bowls do not flush in the opposite direction south on the southern hemisphere. They flush in whatever direction the jet is forcing them to flush in.
Yep.
So if your toilet, you turn the jet in your toilet, it would flush in the opposite direction. Drains don't drain differently in the southern hemisphere, just like they don't drain differently in the northern hemisphere. You've got to have something greater than 300 miles across for the Coriolis effect to even have a slight influence on spin. So, no. There's your answer to that. Victor, again, not an issue with us, not an issue with the U.S. either. Thankfully, this is almost an automatic recurver. It's already moving off to the west-northwest. We'll continue to gain latitude as we go through the next several days. It is expected to get really close to a Category 1 hurricane. Not sure it's actually going to make it to it, but it may. It may briefly become a Category 1 hurricane. This is, headed like Rose into the colder waters, and it will eventually just die.
There's no room on that door.
There's no room on the door,
Man.
for Victor or Jack. So it doesn't matter what guy is trying to get on the door. The colder waters, that is, she's
a Titanic reference for everyone who maybe not get it.
Yeah, she's just not letting anybody on that door. So that's the good news, is that is also not an issue. And I think I was pretty suspect when the models were showing 2 waves that close together developing. So kind of good to see that National Hurricane Center has dropped that from 90% to 60% now to 0% chance of developing. Whenever you've got 2 waves that close together on the monsoonal trough, usually one of them dominates the other one, and once that happens, you're not going to get 2 of them to develop. So that goes back to the early season rants of don't trust the long-range modeling.
Yeah.
Because long-range modeling was like, there's going to be 2 storms out there back to back, and they're going to be running across the Atlantic, and
be on your doorstep in a week, and it's like,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, I saw a long-range model run in Japan of a typhoon moving at 52 miles an hour off to the west. So that's a new one for me. I don't think I've ever seen a model ever do that before. Obviously, the dynamics don't work at 26 miles per hour. So at 52 miles per hour, you wouldn't have a tropical system. It would just be shearing itself.
Yeah.
So interesting things that happen on those long-range models that just defy the laws of physics. So thankfully, our scary gloom and doom friends on hype pages out there that have, hyped us for Sam, saying Sam was going to hit the U.S., hyped us for Larry, saying Larry was going to hit the U.S. They've been wrong on both occasions. Go figure. And, for the last week or so, I've been seeing, CAG is going to develop, CAG is going to develop. And, yeah, it's possible. We are heading into a pattern where we could see the Central American gyre develop. That's just a broad circulation in the Caribbean and Central America. But at the same time, there's no guarantee that we get anything to develop out of it, even if it does develop. Mm-hmm. And there's no guarantee that the environment is going to be sustainable for tropical development. So certainly we could see the gyre develop, and that's pretty typical this time of year, but that doesn't mean we're going to actually see anything come out of that. And the modeling has continued to push back the timeline on that gyre development. I mean, it was supposed to be by the beginning of next week, and then it was by the end of next week, and now it's by the beginning of the following week after that. So
it'll be by the end of October before you know it.
Yeah. So, that's just one of those things. So out there's not much going on outside of Victor and Sam. Again, our attention will start to turn away from the main development region here in the Atlantic, because what happens this time of year is high pressure off of the coast of Africa that is what we refer to as our subtropical high across the Atlantic. It shifts off to the east and it moves closer to Africa, which means shear increases in the main development region, and so does dry air. We start to see Saharan dust come back and dominate that region, and when that happens, that pretty much squashes all hope of development out in that area. So there is SAM pretty easily picked out on the GFS, and you'll notice across the Gulf of Mexico and the southeast, we've got our streamlines working clockwise, which means high pressure is in control, and that is going to continue. So you can keep seeing that easterly flow for us and northeasterly flow off to our north, but off in the main development region, not much going on. Start to see that little kink develop just to the north of Cuba there. That is where we're going to be paying attention to next week. It's kind of a tut transition, upper level low transition. Possibly could get tropical development there as is circled now. And then we'll also be paying attention to the Caribbean, because you can kind of see that there is a broad circulation trying to develop. Big high pressure in the Gulf of Mexico, and then you've got your southwesterlies in the East Pacific, and then you got your easterlies coming into the Caribbean. So there is a very, very broad circulation that develops there. So that is the gyre, but the GFS right now is not showing any tropical development out of there, unless there was something in the 12Z that I didn't see. So we'll be paying attention to that, and that's typically where we will look this time of year. Yeah. That's where we would expect stuff to develop. And there's certainly going to be a dynamic setup down there that will be favorable for something, some kind of low, but it doesn't mean that we're going to have a explosive Category 4, Category 5 hurricane. But certainly that's where we'll be watching as we go through October. So good news is no imminent threats coming out of the Caribbean. We will be paying attention to the Gulf Stream next week, and that low pressure system developing will actually, unfortunately keep unsettled weather around probably through a good portion of the beginning of next week, maybe all of next week. And will also bring us some cooler air, because it'll be pulling.
There's a benefit to it.
Yeah, it'll be pulling down that cool, dry air from the northeast. So that is the good news. But this is the main tracks. This is what we expect in October. Something to come out of the Caribbean, then kind of track up into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, kind of cross over the peninsula, and then run up the Gulf Stream. And any area that you see there shaded in the brown or red is where you could see something develop. And really, in reality, anything in the blue is where we could have tropical systems. And as noted by our history in the past, plenty of activity has come out of that, including what everyone wants to compare every storm to here, which is Michael. Obviously came out of the Central American gyre right there near the Yucatan Peninsula, and then took about 3 days to go from a tropical storm or tropical depression to a Category 5 hurricane. So obviously there's still plenty of potential in the waters out there, but you do need a favorable setup. And over the Gulf of Mexico, we don't really have it right now. That doesn't mean that we won't have it in 2 weeks from now, but at the current moment, we don't have a whole lot. There is, some cooler water starting to show up. A large part of that has to do with the rainfall that is falling across the central part of the country now, as well as the cool, dry air that we had last week. So water temperature really doesn't have a whole lot to do with our daytime highs. It has more to do with our overnight lows, because water heats up really slowly, it cools down really slowly, which means that the 5-6 hours that the temperature is 90 during the day doesn't do a whole lot to the water, but that long duration temperature of what we have overnight throughout the day, that's what influences the water. So our average temperature at the current moment, I believe, for the last week or so has been in the 70s and lower 70s, which is why we have seen the water cool off a touch. We also have had some mixing and stuff like that, and the easterly flow will also help with some mixing as well. You notice the water around the bend coming in at 81, and then we've got water, near shore water here about 82, 83, and then the water coming out of the mouth of the Mississippi coming out at about 77, 78 degrees. And I'm been trying to piece together why we're seeing red tide. And the answer is I don't know. There's not a real reason for red tide blooms. Like we think there are reasons, and usually have to do with massive amounts of fertilizer or nutrients that get into the water, because red tide's just algae. So usually it follows a big rain and a warm up. But this time of year isn't usually when we see it bloom. So kind of interesting that we've had a sudden emergence of red tide out there. I think the easterlies will help us out a little bit. That'll turn the wind more offshore, so I think that helps things out just a touch. But it is interesting. You know, it's spotty. You were out there.
It hasn't been widespread, no.
Yeah, you were out there a couple days ago.
Yeah,
You didn't.
I did not notice any of it at all.
Okay. So
or if there was out there, it didn't affect me, so I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I drive down Beach Drive every day, so I've seen spots of it in the bays, but it's not like extremely widespread. So if you're watching and you're thinking, oh, I'd like to go to the beach this weekend, I'd say come on down. You know, chances are you're probably not going to see red tide. There might be some spots here or there, but not enough that we've been talking about a fish kill or anything like that. And certainly outside of what we had in around Destin a couple weeks ago, we really haven't had even enough to cause an irritant or that kind of stuff. So if you're planning on coming down, come on down and join us. It should be a nice weekend. Saturday should be nice and warm.
I'll be out there, so I mean.
Kristen gets her daily naps on the beach.
Sometimes I do. This week has been good for that.
About what time do you get out there? You get off. She gets
Sometimes I
get off about
right
noon.
Off work,
so
I'm like going straight to the beach.
you go straight to the beach from.
Bring my bathing suit, change
Wow.
here, go straight to the beach.
That's
I'm not
dedication.
gonna waste that sunshine time.
That's dedication.
Also, like my day winds up like by 4 o'clock. It's getting ready for bed.
Oh yeah,
you
no,
know,
I know.
So.
I know. I get it. You know, if I was in bed at 6:30 when I was on that morning shift, the next day was gonna be a 5 coffee.
We've had some
day.
rough days this week.
And you don't drink coffee.
No, but let me tell you, Coca-Cola has been my best friend in the morning.
I don't know how you don't drink coffee.
Well, I don't like it.
Put sugar in it.
I don't know. Whatever works.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know how you don't do that. I drink like 3 cups of coffee and I get to sleep in the morning. So, yeah, you know, I'm a coffee addict. Sorry.
Well, it was like National Coffee Day yesterday. Did you celebrate?
No, I actually didn't have a cup of coffee yesterday.
Wow. Mr. I drink 3 cups every day.
Yeah, that's true. So, speaking of shutting down the main development region, you'll notice that there is more dust coming across and making its way toward the U.S., and that's usually what we see this time of year. Shear increases, and so does the dust, and so the main development region will likely be cut down. This is the European model. We've already showed you the GFS. You'll notice a very similar pattern setting up. Strong easterlies coming off of Africa. That means dust is coming. And you'll also notice some pretty decent shear into the Caribbean as well. The Euro is a little bit later to develop the gyre. It doesn't get it by the end of next week. And it's a little more aggressive on the upper low in the southeast. So if you don't want dreary weather for 5 days, root for the GFS. If you do want dreary weather for 5 days, you root for the Euro. But both of them have
root
pretty.
for the GFS, because who really wants the weather?
I mean, both of them are pretty similar as far as outcomes go, but one of them is a little more wet than the other. The Euro is a little more progressive as far as that upper low, not just drenching us with rain. Unfortunately, the Euro does really consolidate that line, that troughing, and this would bring us some significantly cooler temperatures. Unfortunately, it would probably bring a heavy rain setup to either the mid-Atlantic or the Northeast, and much like us, they don't need it.
Yeah,
They don't need a heavy rain setup. So, you know, again, difficult pattern we are heading into, but the good news here is nothing really tropical to worry about as we go through the next 7 to 10 days, at least not here. Now, if this troughing setup does happen, certainly we could see some kind of low try to develop on that trough, but it would be subtropical because we would have it attached to a front. So it would be tropical kinda in nature, and it would also have some non-tropical properties. So where are we in the season? We got one name left, Wanda. That's it. And then we're on to the alternative list, which is going to be the bane of my existence because I can't pronounce like half the names on this list.
Well, they're not that bad. Which ones do you not? Which ones?
Let's start with the A name. How do you pronounce the A name?
Adria.
Adria. And then we got Braylon. What's the C name?
Caridad. It's
Caridad?
Spanish. It's Spanish, I think. Yeah.
You sure?
Yes. I'll go 80% confidence on that one.
Deshaun.
Emery. Foster. Gemma. Heath.
Is Gemma Jamaican? I'm sorry.
Possibly. I don't know.
That was a bad joke. I'm sorry.
Okay, what's the J one? That's a hard
Jacobus. That's the only thing I could think of. Jacobus.
Jacobus.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm hoping we don't go much through this list. I'm hoping we start to wind down the season. But speaking of winding down, if there's any questions, let me see if I missed any. We will wrap up the show here shortly. It's another week of mostly fun here because we don't have a whole lot to talk about, at least not threatening to the U.S. So we always enjoy weeks where we can come up here and joke because that's the whole point of the show is kind of take away from what once was dread and kind of move toward, hey, we live here, we deal with it, and this is just part of life in the tropics. That's why we want to do this show. That's why we want to educate. That's why we want to talk about what's going on so that you don't have all the hype meteorologists on Facebook and Twitter just constantly being like, look at hour 257 of the GFS. It's got a category 4 in the Yucatan Peninsula. Cool.
Yeah, check back
let's see
the next model run. Probably won't be there.
Let's see it under hour 180, and then we'll start talking about it because then it becomes within 7 days, and then it might be real. An emphasis on might. 257, anything past 240 is la la land. I mean, the GFS literally has a different physical package after 240 because it has to fill in all the gaps and errors that it made up to 240 with its own information. So it's fantasy. It's fantasy land. It's like, hey, look at all these things I made mistakes on. I'll fix it.
On my own.
On my own.
My own things.
With my own physics. That's not reality. Yeah, that's what you get past 240. Of course, if you're following a hype meteorologist, not to name names.
Don't.
But I'm not going to. I said not to name names.
I know
usually,
like, not to name names.
Usually
wink,
I do
cough,
name
cough.
names, but I'm not naming names this time. But if you do follow some hype meteorologists, or should say social meteorologists, because they're not actual meteorologists, that's the emphasis there. They're not meteorologists, so they don't even realize that past 240, it's a different physics package. They probably don't realize that the Euro is usually wetter than the GFS because the Euro has more information on its low-level moisture. Oh, go figure. And they probably don't realize that the NAM doesn't have a physical package over the water. So the NAM treats stuff over the water just like it does on land, which is why the NAM creates some absolutely awesome scenarios out of tropical systems like the, it was like an 857 low with Laura last year.
Nice.
Which I'm pretty positive somebody explained on social that if we had just let that run keep going, that it would have eventually pulled down cold air from the Arctics, and that 857 would have become a blizzard cane. I think that's what would have happened with the NAM. But anyways, let's see if we got any questions, Spencer.
Here's one.
Do you think it'll make it to Wanda? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think that we will see Wanda before November 30th. If it's not a subtropical system, it might be a fully tropical system. I mean, this year we've had 4 subtropical storms named, including Teresa, that nobody knew about because it lasted for like 6 hours. It was actually the remnants of Peter that then reformed on a cold front and were fully tropical for about 12 hours and then went to post-tropical transition, and they gave it a name. So, we've had that. We had Mindy that was, a 12-hour storm. We had Danny that was like an 8-hour storm. I mean, even Anna was subtropical transition. So, yeah, I am sure that we will clear out the list. We will go to the alternative list. We'll certainly see at least another storm. I'm betting we see probably, I'm guessing at least 3 more is what I'm thinking.
Say,
we get about 3 weeks from now. The long-range modeling is been pretty confident on bringing down some Arctic air into the U.S. We start to get those big fronts to come through the the U.S., and that pretty much kills it. We're already starting to see the shutdown of the MDR. So once we're no longer talking about the coast of Africa, then it's just the Caribbean and the Gulf Stream. So I'm sure we'll get at least 2 or 3 more subtropical, if not fully tropical storms, but not so sure that we'll see anything significant, especially if it doesn't happen in the next 3 weeks. Just it looks like the pattern. I've been thinking that we would have an early fall, and it seems like that has been the case. We've got an early fall coming, at least for the Northeast and the West. Right now it is hot in the plains, but you know, this is, you know, even though it's not cool outside, this is our fall pattern. You know, dry with easterlies. That's a sure sign of fall. So it appears that we make it through 3 more weeks, and we'll probably be saying sayonara to Tropic Topics. I know, Spencer, that hurt your soul.
Don't cry, Spencer, please. Hold it together over there.
It's okay. It's okay. We'll be back next year.
We will.
And who knows, maybe we'll have snow and we can do a special
Do
version.
not. No, thank you. Nope.
We can have a special version of Tropic Topics Cold Edition. What would be called Tropic Topics if we were talking about snow? Just hypothetically.
Frosted topics.
Frosted. Tropic Topics Frosted. That's what it would just be.
Call it
Tropic
Feeling
Topics,
Frosty.
and then you'd take the logo and you'd put ice behind it and icicles hanging off of the top of it. It would be Frosted Tropic Topics or Frozen. Tropic Topics Frozen. We did have Anna and Elsa this year, and Olaf in the Eastern Pacific, so there you go. That would be funny. Any other questions? I think I answered the weakness in the ridge. Somebody asked about recurvatures. That happened. The reason we keep getting these recurves is because the high pressure is not stable across the entire Atlantic, so we're not getting the easterlies to push stuff off to the west, and instead they want to turn off to the north. And I mentioned this last week, I believe, maybe 2 weeks ago, that storms that get strong, we were talking about Sam and the potential outcomes, the stronger the storm becomes, the more Coriolis force it has, and so it wants to gain latitude. So once these systems develop, they don't want to go west anymore, they want to go north. So if there's nothing pushing them off to the west, they go north. And that's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing out of Sam, that's what we're seeing out of Victor, that's what we saw out of Peter, that's what we saw out of Larry. So that's the good news. Mostly all of our tropical systems that have affected the U.S. have come out of the Caribbean this year. We've only had, Danny actually work up the East Coast, come from the Atlantic and go in on the East Coast. I think that's it,
Yeah,
right? Everything else has
yeah.
come out of the Caribbean. So weird season. Hopefully we're wrapping things up here and we're not talking about much more. You got anything else? No? Kristen's ready to
Cut
go
into
home.
nap time.
Kristen's
Sorry.
like, I should be on the beach asleep right now.
No, it's not a beach day. It's a Tropic Topics day.
It is a Tropic Topics Day. Gloria said, Ross, why do we have hurricanes? A friend said
To rearrange.
it was to rearrange beaches and homes. Hurricanes actually do have a purpose, at least in the overall scheme of things. They are massive heat engines. They convert warm water from the oceans and turn them into water vapor and really cool things down. So the Earth is in a constant state of trying to create equilibrium. You've got cold air in the poles, you've got warm air at the equator, and warm air is always trying to go north. Cold air is always trying to come south and create that equilibrium balance. There's 2 ways you could quit that: destroy the sun or get rid of the spin of the Earth.
Yeah, and both would just
Both would
lead
kill
to
us.
us dying. So
Yes, both would kill us.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, if the sun were to disappear in a way that didn't destroy Earth, we would still have weather for about a year because of the amount of radiational heating that is on Earth. So it would take about a year for weather to stop completely. Of course, we would all freeze to death because there would be no heat. But
who's
yeah.
over here wanting frosted topics? So I mean,
frosted. So yeah, that is why we have hurricanes. It's all part of that equilibrium status. It's just hot air trying to go to the poles and cold air trying to come down, and hurricanes are a way to create those heat engines to do that. So that's the Earth's solution to our overall weather patterns. Same thing with synoptic lows. They're done differently. They're cold core instead of warm core, but they're still heat engines. They're still pulling warm air north and pushing cold air south. So it's the same kind of thing. That's the reason why we have them. So good news. Good question. That was a good question. Got a little more deep probably than you wanted to, but it was still a good question.
I saw a cool comment on Kristen's page, or an interesting comment, I should say, that without I know we were creeping up on the rainfall record this year, and he was, Joseph was saying without another system, we might not snap another record. I was curious what y'all thought
Without
about
another tropical system?
Yeah.
Well, we can still snap the record without a tropical system.
Yeah, if especially we get like a cutoff low pattern like we're going into next week, certainly, those cutoff low patterns, thinking back into the past, Carolina's had a 36-inch rain event out of just a cutoff low that sat over South Carolina. So it did have Joaquin in the Bahamas helping to funnel that moisture in. But, it was just a cutoff low system that threw a bunch of moisture across Carolina. So it's possible, but, probably right in the right line of thinking there that if we don't have another tropical system, we probably won't end up with the wettest year on record. I mean, October, November, and December are usually one of our 3 driest months in the year. So if we don't get another tropical system during that time, we're probably going to end up under that 90-inch because we need 89.5. We're sitting at about 71 now. So 19 inches or 18 inches of rain is a lot of rain. And if we just get the average over the next 3 months, it'll just be 9 more inches of rain. So we would need an additional 10 on top of our average. So I don't know if we end up with the wettest year on record. It's possible. Certainly it's been wet. We're well above average. We don't really need any rain. But I don't know if we're going to break that record. We're probably going to end up with a top 10 wettest
It's still going to
year.
be wet, let's be honest, but might not be the record.
Yep. So good question. Good question. I don't think I have anything else. All these people watch and then they don't ask any questions.
That's because we're entertaining enough.
We must just be that good at our jobs that you don't have any questions.
They're just learning.
They're just learning. They're just here to learn.
like dazed and trying to take it all in.
Yeah. Or, Kristen's just trying not to fall asleep over there because she's like, it's nap time. I should be asleep right now. That's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up. We'll be back here next Thursday, hopefully around 1. Around 1 being the key emphasis.
Just be on standby.
That's me. Yeah, be on standby around 1. Thanks to our sponsors for making this possible. And, of course, Spencer, our phenomenal graphic. We're going to call you a graphicologist. I'm updating your title over there.
Yes.
I'm giving myself applause right now.
Oh, fantastic, man. Good
humble,
job for you.
very humble.
Yes. One of these days we'll get the Spencer cam up so that you can actually put it. You know what? Maybe we just make this like, remember Al in Tool Time?
You just take the camera and just turn it.
Season finale.
Do you remember Al in Tool Time though? All you ever saw was his eyes and forehead, like you never saw his mouth. They always had something covered up. So maybe Spencer will be our Al.
That'll be my camera.
Al, A-L. No, it wasn't Al. What was his name? Al was his co-host. What was the?
I have no idea what you're talking about. So.
I can't remember either. I thought it was Al too.
Oh my
All
gosh.
right, someone comment and let us know.
The neighbor in Tool Time, not Al. Tom, do you know the neighbor in Tool Time?
Guess you're gonna have to go ponder on this while you do your forecasting.
I'll have to Google it.
And real quick before we go, I want to
it's okay.
say
we're wrapping.
hey to Gloria and to be expecting a DM or a personal message from us. I want to get you some good gear since you're such a good fan. We love having you in the chat every week. So we're gonna try to hook you up with some gear. So you
That's
should
right.
see a
I
message
forgot.
from us.
We were supposed to give away some swag today.
Well, we're giving swag to Gloria.
Yeah. So thank you, Spencer,
Yeah,
for remembering.
Gloria is
She's
our first winner.
So
first winner.
Gloria,
Congrats, Gloria.
Congrats. We will message you, and you can get some swag. It's gonna be, spoiler alert, it'll be a
Shh, don't spoil
a
it.
koozie and a pen. Mr. Wilson, that's what it was.
How'd you get Al from Wilson?
Al is his co-host on Tool Time. It's Al Borland, and then You got Mr. Wilson. Anyways, that's going to do it for us. If you don't have the Storm Track 13 app, download it. It's fantastic. Again, we use it every single day. And I mean, I use it every single day. It is updated.
That's because I put the forecast in every morning, and Ross wants to know what I'm doing.
That's true. That's true. You know, I don't really do anything. I just come in and slightly adjust
He's
Kristen's
like, what Kristen
numbers
go? All
to make
right,
sure
looks
that
about right.
to make sure that it looks like I changed something, but I don't actually do anything.
So far this week, I mean, that might be true.
Our
Our numbers have not really.
I've changed very little.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a whole lot. That's kind of the pattern that we've been into. I think I've adjusted like rain chances at the end of the week and maybe
like the
temperatures
wording.
slightly and some of the wording. That's been about it. The forecast has been pretty consistent between the two of us. That's good news. That means that we're doing the right thing. That means we're on the same track. Anyways, we're losing viewership. People don't care anymore.
They're like, all right. bye."
Let's wrap this up. We'll be back next Thursday. Thanks.
Thank you for watching Tropic Topics, sponsored by Peden Heating and Air Conditioning and Mariana Toyota. Be sure to download the Storm Track 13 app today to stay up to date with all of the latest weather information. For more local news, weather, sports, and more, visit mypanhandle.com.